really want to thank everybody for hopping on here tonight. We're super excited about launching Next Level Athlete Advantage. My name is Chris Swisher, and I'm one of the co-founders of Next Level Athlete Advantage. Before we get to Brittany tonight, I thought I would simply say hi to everybody and kind of go through everything that is to come. Tonight, we have the pleasure of interviewing Brittany Viola, who's a 2012 Olympic diver, who's got quite the story and athletic career. We're going to hear a little bit about her story. We've prepared some interview style questions, and then we're going to open it up to any questions that you guys might have. We are recording this webinar, so we're going to turn it into a podcast later. So the questions you ask might be featured on our podcast in the future. So it's pretty cool. Before we jump into the interview, I kind of want to share with you the endeavor that Amy, Laura, and I are on with Next Level Athlete Advantage. So the three of us came together because of a love for sport and competition and athletics. We also really love to see young student athletes succeeding in their sport and in life. And so when we talked about our own careers and our own struggles and our own triumphs, we figured it out, or maybe we haven't figured it out, but we determined that there were a couple of things that we wish we could have changed, or we wish we would have had. And that's a community to plug into and resources, files or podcasts, things like that. And that's what we're creating with Next Level Athlete Advantage. So we're going to bring some amazing resources through downloadables or amazing podcasts and webinar interviews, and eventually mentoring student athletes throughout their athletic career. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish. So we are really excited about launching this tonight. This is the first webinar, first podcast that we're doing. My name is Chris Swisher. The three of us would like to take just a real short bit of time to kind of introduce ourselves, to kind of get to know our story and where we came from, and hopefully get to know more about you when you plug into the community that we're creating. So my name is Chris again. I'm from a really small town in Southern Indiana. My story is kind of about belief, really. My senior year in high school, I qualified for the state in the mile, and I actually won the dang thing. I really probably shouldn't have. I was probably 8th or 9th or 10th best runner. But because I excelled so late in my high school career, I'd already picked a school, and it was a Division II school. And I stuck with my commitment, and it just didn't work out. It just wasn't the right fit for me. So I ended up transferring. I went to Miami of Ohio, which was at the Division I level, and was able to become a Division I All-American in cross country my senior year. Again, probably shouldn't have, but it worked out, and I believed in myself and a half. I competed for a couple of years, semi-pro with Brooks while teaching and coaching, and eventually became a head track coach where I mentored student athletes through their journey and recruiting process, helping them hopefully select the college that was right for them. So in the end, I don't think I'd ever change anything about my journey, but I just wish I had somebody in my corner. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to turn it over to Laura to introduce her.
Hey guys, I'm Laura Bruno, and one of the co-founders of Next Level Athlete Advantage. I'm a mom of 3 and married and living currently in Connecticut, but I grew up in the Midwest as well. Kind of like Chris, I went to high school at a really small school in Northwest Indiana, and I was the first female athlete to go to state in any sport at my high school. So it was, I ran cross country and track. I was a multi-sport athlete, but those were my loves. And I decided I wanted to go and compete in college. And, you know, my parents hadn't gone to college, so they did the best that they could. I didn't have a whole lot of guidance from my high school. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I ended up at Indiana University my first year, Division I, and, you know, it was all the bells and whistles, but like Chris, it just didn't feel right. It just was not a good fit for me. And really that change almost made me quit running altogether. I decided that I wanted to continue running, so I transferred schools. I finished up at the University of Southern Indiana, where Chris left. And it was an amazing fit. It felt like home to me. I found my family. I found my support system. And I'm telling you, when you find that fit, there's nothing like it. I finished my degree in exercise science. I worked in physical therapy after that for about 10 years. And then I kept coming back to athletics. I want to help athletes. And ultimately I got my degree in sport management and became a part of this team. And now I want to pursue being part of that support system that really made a difference for me. So that's who I am. And I want to introduce my amazing other co-founder here, Amy Snow. So here she is.
All right. Thank you, Chris and Laura. Yeah, I'm Amy Snow, and I have the privilege of being one of the co-founders of Next Level Athlete Advantage with Chris and Laura. And I just want to echo as well, just my excitement to be launching here tonight. And we're so grateful that you're here with us live on our first webinar. And so thanks for being here. And so just briefly, I grew up in upstate New York, and I currently live in Indiana, but I grew up in upstate New York. And soccer and basketball were my sports. Played them all growing up and through high school. But of the two, soccer definitely was my first love. And so my soccer career in high school, we made it to the state finals. All 4 years I played varsity. We lost my freshman, sophomore, and junior year, but we won my senior year. So that was a great cap to the career there. I also, had multiple kind of all-state honors, was the assist leader, or I guess I hold the record for assists in New York State for girls soccer, and was named first team All-American my senior year. And then I went on to Division I soccer at Cornell University. And I think having been recruited by, several coaches, I think one of the key things that drew me to Cornell was my coach, because he treated me as a person first and a player second. And that was huge for me and so important. And I had a great career there. Loved playing soccer there. At the time, it was a top 20 school for soccer. And I got named Ivy League Rookie of the Year my freshman year, had some all Ivy honors. And my senior year was an academic All-American. And then in 2018, I got inducted into the New York State Girls Soccer Hall of Fame. So that was a dear honor that I really cherish. My professional career has been a little winding. I was a 7th grade math teacher for a couple of years. And then I went into traveling music with bands all over the country and the world for about 16 years. And then got into the entrepreneurial world and as a professional life coach and leadership trainer. And that is a passion of mine, for sure. I love coming alongside people, athletes in particular, to help them thrive, to help them get to the next level, and then transition from their sport to their next career. And so that's been and like Laura said, it's like coming back, right? Comes back full circle, because you think, gosh, a math teacher and you were in music, and it's like, how did you come to this? But at the core of myself, I'm definitely athlete at the core. And it was funny. I'll just say this real quick. My dear friend of mine, when I was trying to figure out who to zone in on for coaching clients, my friend of mine was watching me watch the World Cup game, I don't know, several years ago. The women's team won the World Cup, and I was just going crazy. And she's like, that's the people you need to be reaching. So, and it was like, yeah, duh. So it's a joy to really to come back to my roots, and love getting to do this with Chris and Laura. So enough about us. Now we have the privilege of getting to hear from Brittany. I have had the honor and privilege of being Brittany's life coach for the past 6 months, and have just really appreciated the journey that we've been on, that she's been on, and then allowed me to be a part of. And so I'm so grateful that she was said yes to being willing to be on this webinar / podcast. And so Brittany, we're so grateful that you're here. So I want to give you just a quick background on Brittany, and then I'll hand it over to you. All right, so Brittany Viola Gonzalez, right? She has 22 years of sport experience, competing at the highest levels in both the sport of gymnastics and diving. After being the Olympic alternate twice in 2004 and in 2008, Brittany represented the United States at the 2012 Olympic Games in London in the 10-meter platform. Brittany is married to Anthony Gonzalez and has 3 spunky children, Micah, Kyla, and Daniel. Brittany works for Athletes in Action in South Florida and is passionate about holistically training the individual behind the performer. She has her MBA in entrepreneurship and is currently piloting a card game and tool that Anthony and her created called Ferret Flush. So Brittany, thank you again for being here. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Chris and Laura. Thank you for trusting me with your first webinar. I don't know why, I guess I didn't put that together, that this is your first webinar. And I love how you're starting on a topic that's been talked about for a while now, but specifically mental health. And so I'm honored and privileged to share a little bit of my story and how it pertains to mental health and this topic, but specifically how it showed up in athleticism. So one of the statements that I'm going to share throughout this is what you believe shapes who you'll become. As a 10-year-old, I was permitted by my school to leave a couple of hours early to go to gymnastics. I had aspirations of becoming an Olympic gold medalist and was continuing to climb all of the levels in this sport, from level 5 to level 7, level 9. I literally skipped every 2 years and made it to the highest level in the sport by age 11, international elite. On the one hand, this was super cool to leave school early. I was like, who gets to do this? Like, I'll leave school early, yay, less school. I also got to receive some special treats on the way. My mom would make incredible smoothies, and it would be an awesome experience to just make my way out of school in this unique trip to the gym. On the other hand, I was very surprised to experience in time some dreadful thoughts that kept flooding my mind. While in the car on the way, I started hoping that we would get into an accident, or the carpool parent that was taking me would get lost, or a red light would just stay red and not turn green ever. I honestly didn't know what to do with thoughts like these, especially at such a young age. So I did what I believed was most helpful. I just kept it to myself. My little 2-year-old actually just woke up as we're doing this. So if you hear any noises in the background, that is my 2-year-old. So my husband will step in for that. So this was a really tough season for me to balance progressing in a sport at a high level and then at the same time experiencing new things in my mind and in my heart and in my body. Fast forward, I'm 18 years old. I just graduated from high school and I'm taking the year off before going to college just to see where I could take my diving career. At this point, I'm one of the best divers in the United States. I had placed 4th in the world at 16 years old with an Olympic gold medalist, Laura Wilkinson. I placed a year later, 2nd in the United States, just missing the Olympic team in 2004. At the same time, I was struggling. Here's an excerpt that I want to share from one of my journal entries around that time. January 6, 2006. At the moment, I'm sitting in my car in front of my house, engine still running, music playing, writing. I woke up this morning with a full day ahead of me. Instead, it has turned into a total waste of a day. I ate a complete breakfast at the kitchen table and wasn't quite full or satisfied afterward. So I had another meal. That was enough. So I went to the living room to watch TV. I also brewed some coffee. After drinking 2 big cups, I went into the freezer and pulled out the chocolate pecan pie my mom made for New Year's. Not really even wanting any, I ate it right out of the glass pan on the living room stairwell watching TV. Not long after, the family started getting up. My mom made French toast and bacon, which I decided to eat. 2 strips of bacon and 3 French toasts with butter, powdered sugar, syrup. Everyone left to go to the school for baseball workout. I was home alone. I had a glass of orange juice, made myself a hot chocolate with a big marshmallow on top, and put a pizza in the oven, which I ended up eating all of while watching a movie in my parents' room. After the movie ended, I went back downstairs to the kitchen and grabbed the bread loaf, which had 5 slices, butter, jelly, and put Cheetos into a big Tupperware bowl. Then I went back upstairs to watch another movie, but in the playroom this time. When the movie ended, most of the family was home. My little sister was the first to find me and could tell something was wrong and asked if I had binged. I told her, yes. Then she asked what I ate, and I pushed her away. Not physically, but just asked her to leave me alone. It is such an honor to talk about this topic because this is the inside. This is the real. This is the stuff that you don't see that's videotaped and shown on cameras worldwide. And yet this is real. This is what is going on simultaneously. What the heck is mental health? Mental health involves a condition of a person's mental and emotional well-being. Mentalhealth.gov explains how mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also determines how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is honestly a loaded word that encompasses a lot of things that can range in severity from minor symptoms to debilitating conditions. I'll come back to these 3 words: thoughts, feelings, and actions. Less than 2 months after my journal entry, I was on my way to Arizona to spend 45 days at an inpatient eating disorder facility, Remuda Ranch. My struggle with food was out of control. My psychologist and nutritionist that I had been meeting with were not working. I wasn't getting any better. Things were just getting worse. Little did I know that this would be one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my life. And I remember wondering and even wrestling with this question: am I really bad enough to be here? One of the most significant moments for me was receiving my first feelings chart. Has anyone ever seen one of these things? It had all these funny faces on it with words and descriptions underneath with hand drawings: sad, angry, ecstatic, irritated, bored, to name just a few. Up until this point in my life, I don't remember anyone asking me, "How are you feeling?" More like, "How are you doing?" which I would normally answer, "Good, all right, fine." That was probably my favorite. I learned these are actually not feelings. When asked how I was feeling at Remuda Ranch, they really wanted to know and waited patiently for a descriptive word or two. This was really awkward, really awkward for me. And at the same time, very kind. One emotion that came up a lot during my time at Remuda Ranch was anger. This was really strange because I was seen as a very bubbly, lighthearted, laugh a lot kind of girl. After a counseling appointment, my psychologist asked me to write a paper, which was not my favorite thing to do, about why I am angry. I thought it was kind of a joke, but I went to the computer and I started typing, and I just started with focusing on my family members. One person at a time. And I was so surprised. This document got very long. There was a lot more going on in me. If anyone has seen the movie Shrek, Shrek is talking to Donkey as they're walking along. And Shrek tells Donkey, there are a lot more to ogres than people think. Ogres are like onions. Layers. Onions have layers. Well, there's a lot more to Brittany than what people think. Honestly, there was a lot more to me than I even knew. Arizona was the beginning of my adventure of starting to pull back the layers and discover new depths of myself. What I believe shapes who I become. What I think affects what I feel, and what I feel affects how I act. Thoughts, feelings, actions. As a teen, I remember getting dressed to go out. I was going to meet up with some friends, and I stood in my closet staring at all of the clothes and determined I have nothing to wear. I most definitely had things to wear. I could have clothed all of my friends. Here's a glimpse of what was going on the inside. I thought, I'm fat, I'm ugly, nothing looks good on me. Ugh. I felt defeated, angry, and sad. I acted or responded by shutting down, giving up trying to find an outfit, and deciding I'm not going. What you believe determines who you become. Now, as an adult, as I get ready to go out with friends, here's a sample of what goes on inside. I think I am beautiful. I am a one-of-a-kind creation. I have my own look. I feel confident, excited, and hopeful. And I act by getting dressed and communicating with my friends, my ETA, to meet up. Wow, what a difference. Being aware of my thoughts, feelings, and actions has been a practiced and learned skill for the last 15 years. With professional counsel, one aspect of my healing journey has been going back into memories like when I was 10 and 18 years old and owning new truths that I didn't know how to validate nor claim at the time. 10-year-old Brittany, wanting anything but to go to the gymnastics gym. There is something going on in you that's important to listen to. There's a reason you don't want to go to the gym. You're not crazy. You are wiser than you know. 18-year-old Brittany who cannot stop visiting the kitchen and numbing out in front of the screen. You are not doing all of these things for no reason. There are things going on inside that are fueling your behaviors. You're hurting. You're lonely. You're so strong to ask for help. What you believe shapes who you become. I am on an adventure. I'm still discovering. I'm consistently learning about myself. Mental and emotional well-being is a process. Obtaining some sort of perfection is not what it's about. It's about progress. One thought, one feeling, and one action at a time. Thank you for listening and jumping into this aspect of my life. I realized Amy, that when you asked me to talk about mental health, I actually had not dived in at this level in the last 15 years. And so thank you for this opportunity to share aspects of my story that I am hoping that someone would be encouraged and inspired by in their life.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Brittany, for being vulnerable and opening yourself up to us. I mean, that takes a lot of courage to do so. And we so appreciate the things that you shared and giving us a peek behind the curtain, right? Because a lot of times, right, with elite athletes, we see the end product, right? The end result, the glory, or, you know, and we don't see necessarily all the work and the sacrifice, but then also too, just the hurt and struggles that are going on internally that you're dealing with. So thank you for giving us a glimpse and for your process, sharing in part of your process. I know you, like you said, you're on a journey.
For sure. As
we all are. So I have some questions that I want to bring to the table, but please, if you guys have a question, feel free to, you know, I think there might be like I don't know if there's a little hand that you can raise on your screen, or you can type it in the chat. So don't hesitate, and I'll be quiet, and then you can unmute yourself and ask Brittany the question. But I'll get things started, and as questions come to you, please feel free to chime in, and we'll go from there. Okay. All right. So Brittany, so this question, I'm going to start with an easier one, right? Because you know me, Coach Amy. I may ask some questions that are going to cause you to have to dig deeper still. So
I have my journal to reflect later.
But let me ask you this. So when did you start in gymnastics?
I started gymnastics when I was 4 years old.
Wow. Okay. So 4 years old. And it was at 10. You said it was at 10 that you didn't want to go to the gym. Was that the first time that you really felt that way? Or was there anything kind of led up to that that where those feelings were present?
Yeah, I remember having, for the first time, having thoughts of not being sure if I wanted to keep doing gymnastics at around 7 years old.
Okay. And this question, answer what you feel you want to or can. So what was behind those thoughts as you look back now? Or like, because my guess is that as a kid, you weren't really sure, like, and you said, I'm just going to keep quiet.
Right.
So you had some knowledge there of like, I don't know that I'm going to bring this out. Do you know what was behind feeling those feelings? And share again, like share what you feel you can or what's appropriate for you.
Yeah, well, I'll share one thing for sure. There were things that were happening in the gymnasium that I would say if I were sitting in the stands watching my little girl do gymnastics, I wouldn't want to see certain words spoken to other athletes in the way that they were. So there was a lot that I observed as a little girl, especially as I progressed in the sport so quickly. And I was with girls that were almost double my age. So I was in a more, looking back, I didn't know this, right? Because this is my norm. I'm just progressing in the sport, doing my thing as a little girl. And I am around teenagers. They've already hit puberty. They're already, you know, kind of even thinking about college. And I'm just thrown in the mix because I'm just having fun doing my thing and picking up on all the skills and even progressing in them faster than others. So yeah, there were words that were spoken or behaviors that were done in the gymnasium that caused fear and uncertainty. There was an obedience that I was really good at playing whatever part I needed to, because I wanted to be the best performer. I wanted to be an obedient gymnast who obeyed their coach and didn't know really what is right or wrong. And yet at the same time, I did know what was wrong and didn't know how to even put words to what I was experiencing and how to express that to my coach, nor my parents or my family. That's probably been the hardest part of my journey, is finding the words to share what's really going on in me and around me.
Right. Right. When you had mentioned, which we'll come back to, that you really hadn't been asked, how are you feeling? You may not have even, like you said, the words, or even how to even, like how do you put that into context, especially at a young age like that.
Yeah.
So then what made you, like, how, because you talked about gymnastics, then all of a sudden you said, you went into, you're like this elite diver. So how did you go from gymnastics to diving? Like, how did you make that leap? No pun intended.
Yeah. Well, it actually was one of the best decisions I ever made, besides going to Remuda Ranch, was quitting the sport of gymnastics, even though I still loved it. To this day, it's one of my favorite sports to watch. And even if when I think about doing exercise, I kind of just want to go do cartwheels or front walkovers or swing on a bar. I'm not really sure. It's just in me. So I still love the sport. And at the same time, honoring what was going on inside, it was the best decision for me to step away from that sport. And when I did, I actually tried my sister's sport, which was volleyball. I didn't have the height, but man, it was just so fun. I had never done a team sport before, and I just laughed the whole time, got most improved player. And and when I was at PE one day, being a normal student, I was doing old gymnastic skills on the diving board, and the swim coach saw me and asked if I wanted to join the diving team at our school. And so I didn't have a sport I was doing. I said yes. And I met an Olympic coach within that month who had just returned from the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney.
Wow. So cool. I mean, small world, because I was in Sydney for the 2000 Olympics, not as an athlete, but I did get to go to the Olympics and just do some things there. So that's cool. So then it sounds like you went through the ranks pretty quickly in diving as well. Yeah. So, all right. So that answers the question. Yeah. How did you make the switch? So thanks. You kind of covered, that was my next question, but you covered it in your answer. All right. So we're going to make a turn here a little bit. This is a more serious turn, because in your story, then you talked about, you're 18, and you shared your journal entry, and you talked about binging. And so was this your main way of coping with whatever was going on within you, the stress, what is it that you would say you were coping with? And is that the main way, or were there other things that helped?
Yeah. I would say at the time, I really wasn't sure what I was struggling with.
Okay.
I would have probably blamed it on food. So yeah, there were moments where I would eat more than I wanted to. And I found it fascinating that even in my journal, I was like, I don't really want to be doing this. And yet I'm doing it. And so the main behavior that I had used as coping was food. And it's interesting how even just in that one journal entry, how many times food was paired with technology and not being fully present with the food that I eat. And so I've learned a lot with, if I go sit on the couch and turn the TV on with food, it's one of those signals for me, like, is something going on? Like, because the way that I would like to eat is make a meal, sit down and be present with the food that I eat, be grateful for it, taste it, use it as a place to connect with my family, with my friends. That's how I imagine food being enjoyed, not in isolation in front of the TV. And so yeah, food became one of those coping mechanisms, technology. And as I had these binges, exercise or trying to get rid of the calories that I had taken in was something that I'd go do an extra workout here and there and above and beyond what I needed to do, or that would even be beneficial for my athletic career. But I knew what I felt like I needed to do to fix my wrong. And so there was a constant back and forth that was happening. I mess up, now I got to make up for something. But it was all very private and no one really knew any of it except for me.
So that's interesting. You said no one knew it except for you, and yet your sister asked, so when did she know? Did she know before you realized it, or what?
Yeah, I know that I started seeing that things were off around 15, 16 years old. And so my mom helped me find a psychologist and a nutritionist because I just knew it was off, that I was eating as I was. So there were things, I guess I did share at certain points. And then my mom definitely leaned in and was like, okay, how can I help? And so along the way, Kaylee, our whole family was in the know. But Kaylee, we've just had a special relationship in this process because I have like such a funny moment with her as I was struggling. And I remember where we were having a conversation and I was like, this is just so tough. And she's like, Brittany, just eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. Yes. I was like, that is great advice. I love it. I want to do that. So I think that, and it's so interesting to hear a statement like that, because that is accurate. That's healthy. That's coming from a place, like a stable place. And yet at the end, that the other side, I didn't even know how that was possible because of all of the other stuff that was going on inside me, specifically mentally and emotionally. And so I just, that was really awesome to have family members that could be that truth for me, that hope for me when I couldn't quite see that yet.
Right. So how did this, as with how you were coping, like how did this impact you as an athlete? And then as a person, just outside of being an athlete, how was this impacting you in the moment?
Yeah, the biggest word that comes to mind for that is insecure. The more I coped and struggled, the more insecure I got about my life, me being a woman and just who I was. Am I worth choosing? Am I worth a man choosing to enter into a relationship with? I am. I didn't believe it then though. As I performed in the season that I was in, being chosen was a really big thing. So I mentioned relationships, but also in sport. I know that teams dynamics, it might feel a little bit more, but in gymnastics and even diving, it's very subjective, the sport. And a lot of teams are selected based on what observers or judges think about you. And that determines your faith if you're going to cross the line. And I had received like runner up for a long time. And I wanted to say like, oh, that doesn't really mean much. It's not that big of a deal. I'm just going to work harder. But it did. It really hurt. And I didn't really have a place to even feel that, like to really like sit and like cry, for someone to empathize with me and be like, this is really tough. That is hard to get back up and keep fighting. for someone to empathize. I didn't feel like I had that in that season. So those are just my insecurity elevated.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Now this, we talked about this in a previous conversation, but I mean, it ties in right here, because you had said that your eating disorder was not the real problem or issue, but that it was a symptom of something deeper. So what do you mean by that? Like, what did you mean when you said that? Like, because a lot of times we attack the behavior or what we see, but so can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, the best statement that I've heard so far in my recovery journey has been that it's a legitimate need being met in an illegitimate way. Meaning that there is a real need that I have going on. However, the ways that I'm going about solving it will never solve the problem. So someone might say, you know, I'm just trying to think of an example. But for me, the legitimate need, as I've pulled back the layers and gotten deeper, and I even shared this just a little bit before this question, is I wanted to be chosen. That's a big deal to me, to be chosen. Now, what that looks like is very unique to me. And this is probably my favorite part about mental health and everyone's unique journey, is everyone is a discovery. Like it's everyone's a masterpiece worth discovering. And everyone's inner working is different, just as we all are different externally. And so the deeper need for me of being chosen, one of the ways that I feel most loved in my life is quality time. If you asked me to go get a coffee, Amy, I am like, you texted me and wanted to go get a coffee. Like it pulls something out in me that you value time with me. You want to get to know me. You want to, you're setting aside time. You're sacrificing time to be present with me. That meant a lot. So quality time, being chosen, and some of these things I didn't quite experience. Like in the gymnasium, you don't sit down and have powwows about, like what's going on deeper in your life. Like, tell me about how, how'd you sleep? Did you rest? What's been like, what's really, on your heart these days? I would love to know what's driving you. And, just life was very disconnected from the gym. And I felt like I had a bunch of different lives, being in school, leaving early, like going to the gym, just trying to get any homework in to start the day over again. I was traveling a lot, just relationships for me. It's not to anyone's fault. I want to be an Olympian, but there were sacrifices. There were things that I wasn't able to do that my friends were able to do. Go to that birthday party, go on this vacation. I remember going to vacations late because I could only miss one day of gymnastics for about 6 years when I'm in elementary up to middle school. I just wanted to go. I wanted to go play. Right. I wanted to be a kid, so to not be invited to those, to see kids go on ski trips, like I wanted to do those things, but also develop deeper relationships with people. And so anyway, that's one aspect of my life that if I could go back and say, like, figure that out, what would I intentionally now make choices to say, hey, I'm taking this whole week off of gym. I'm going to trust that my career in gymnastics is going to be okay. I'm going on this vacation and I'm going to go have a virgin strawberry daiquiri and it's just going to be awesome. I'm going to connect with my sister and my friends. I'm going to value relationships because that will help also bring out the best performance in gymnastics. But I didn't know how to ask for that or what to do in that stage. So that's just one example.
Sure. That's a great example. Yeah, because I know that you have said multiple times to me, I need to learn how to play, because you didn't play, and it's because you didn't have a typical childhood. Most Olympians don't. right? Because you're sacrificing a lot to attain an incredible goal and dream. So let me ask you this: as you look back, what were some signs or other symptoms that something was wrong or off? And I'm going to have a follow-up question to that, but let's start. There's a reason why I'm asking, but was there anything other, like when you look back as you're reflecting on, your life as in that span, were there other signs and symptoms that you can see now that you didn't then, that something was wrong?
I'd say isolation. So if I had certain relationships that I kind of just step back from when I'd normally go out. So that example of getting dressed, that was kind of a frequent thing especially as my eating disorder and my insecurities. It was like, if I'm not texting back or, showing up to something, that's like, those are some signs where my friends know to lean in, like, and say, like, is everything okay? Or just show up at my door, So that was one of them, is isolation. But also I thought about how specifically with my mom or like some family members, I'd be really snappy and I'd have this, and it might not have been observed from the other side. It probably was, maybe more than even I was aware of it. They probably said, like, saw it a lot and was like, what is wrong with Brittany? But for myself, there was like I'm really angry about my life and what's going on right now. And I don't know what to do about it. And so as someone would lean in to love me or like just their normal day, it'd be like a really rude, snappy, like pushing away awkwardly. So those are just two signs that I thought of based on that.
No, okay. I appreciate that. So the follow-up question then, because the reason I'm asking is, like, what would you tell athletes, coaches, and parents to look for? And like what questions, what would be good questions for them to ask or ask themselves? I mean, sometimes they may not be as self-aware to ask themselves the questions, but for those coming around them, what would you tell them on this side of it? What would you tell them to look for? We'll start there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've talked to my family a lot about this because sometimes I wondered if they really could have done too much, like a lot of what was going on in me. It would take a lot of courage to come out and talk to someone. Like, and I even think I took really good steps. There's statistics that talk about how by age 14 is where symptoms start showing in mental health. And then usually someone doesn't get help until about 11 to 14 years later. So for me by 14 years old to experience the symptoms and even start realizing something's off and say something it's a big deal that I was already in counseling by 14, 15 years old. But questions are such a beautiful place to ask a simple question, how are you feeling today? And actually sit there and be curious of listening for the answer. And even amongst like a team, knowing feeling language, like it's okay to, one of my favorite things about feelings is like, I remember having a lie that they're good or bad, like if you're angry, it's bad. If you're sad, it's bad. If you feel joyful, that's good. If you feel excited, that's good. But I've learned that that's actually really inaccurate. There's comfortable emotions and there's uncomfortable emotions.
Yeah,
it's not good or bad. They're actually all great. They're all gifts because each of them help you discover something more about yourself. And then you're able to verbalize that more clearly to those you're around. So if my sister Kaylee were to ask me today, how are you feeling? I feel scared, excited, And I love this too about feelings, is you could have a multitude of them.
Right.
And ultimately, just like in the movie Inside Out, I remember Joy just really wants sadness to get out of her life. And then at the same time, she sees such power in sadness, and in sitting with it, it just took some time. And there was great healing that happened inside of this little girl, and even for Joy to observe. And so I've seen that in my own life. We were talking, this is really funny, about the weather before people got on today, and about Miami weather in particular, and how there are rainstorms that come in and move out, and it's kind of abrupt. Like sometimes you don't know they're coming. And so oftentimes I explain how emotions are like that. They come in, but they will leave. Some of them may be like a hurricane, or like linger a little longer, like Indiana rain or something.
Right.
It'll pass. And so, that's just one thing. Like if there was like one step someone could take to just pull out feeling charts and start talking about it, I've learned that even with my children at 7, 4, and 2, to start talking about emotions so that they can express themselves. It's one of the first signs that tell us anything about our body. Like our bodies are loud. The feelings are loud. And then that helps us like, oh, like there's something that might be going on. It's like a cue, to address it and hone in. So that's like the main thing of just these certain emotions, and being able to talk about it, and not to be afraid that it's like, now we have to have this like crying party or something. That's not how, some people might like to do that, but I haven't experienced it yet.
Right. No, that's wise counsel. Absolutely. So I do have more questions, but I do want to pause momentarily just to see if anyone else has a question for Brittany. Has anything come up as she's talked that you want to ask further about? If not, I'll continue, but I want to give you an opportunity and not hog all the questions. Okay. All right, I will keep going. Again, if something comes up, don't hesitate to let us know in the chat, or with a emoji or something in your window. All right, so the next question I have for you then is, how you mentioned it briefly as you were talking. How did you take the step to get help?
Mm-hmm.
And who helped you get there?
How did I take the step to get help?
Yeah, so because obviously, right, there's something going on, and for you, like you said, you got involved. Like that statistic you just shared, that when someone realizes there's a mental health issue, that the average, it takes them 11 to 14 years before they get help.
Mm-hmm.
But here you are at a much younger age. Was that you, or more like your mom or your family saying, you need help? But then also too, then the step to go to Arizona, like, yeah, how did you decide that, or was it decided for you?
Yeah, all of it was my decision. I think I remember hearing from certain people that they thought that I was really sensitive, and I've kind of been like, I remember being like, that's like offensive. I don't know, that's kind of rude saying I'm sensitive. But I've learned that that's actually a really good attribute about myself, that I have like a sensitivity, that something is a little off, and it's not okay. Something's off kilt. And so I'm grateful that I had that, to just know like something's off, like something's not okay, and to listen to it. And I'm grateful to have that relationship with my mom where I could lean into her to tell her that something was off, even if she didn't know how exactly to make the next move. But my mom was the one that helped to research, where could I possibly go, who would be credible individuals that I could meet with. And I'm grateful that I had insurance to help with certain things.
Right.
Because that oftentimes, like I had mentioned, like, am I really bad enough to be impatient? Like, and oftentimes is really sad, but someone may not be able to go impatient and get that kind of quality care because they're not bad enough yet. They're not severe enough. And you have to go to a counselor for a certain amount of time and have experienced certain symptoms that were at a certain level to then get that kind of these awesome resources that could change someone's life and free them up. So yeah, a lot of it was, I was very aware that something was not okay. And then I was grateful to have my mom specifically is a researcher, a finder, and perseveres through making sure her children are taken care of.
Right. No, that's great. Having that, having people in your corner, like we talked about. So, so for those who are here live and those who will be watching this webinar or listening to the podcast later on, what would you recommend to them? Like, what are some steps they could take to get help? Let's start there. Like, they're just, those who are just realizing, okay, something's up here. I'm not quite right. I'm off. Like, what are some initial steps that would be good for them to take?
Yeah. My first thought is community. There's no true healing or progress that can happen in isolation. I have no idea who that first person can be for someone. For me, I did have a safe mom to go to, and then the resources to get the help that I needed. And so for each individual, it's going to be unique, but maybe it's while you're in school. Maybe it's that there's usually a counselor within the school, or maybe it's a teacher who you just really trust, who seems safe. Usually peers have no clue what the heck is going on. So as much as friends are awesome and are a place where maybe you can dialogue about certain things, to take like an action step at this with something like this, to go to someone who's a bit ahead of you and can help you get the help you need.
Right.
So that would be the first, is just telling one person.
Yeah. Starting with one.
Yeah.
So, on the proactive side, like, how do you suggest, since we're talking to athletes, I know this applies to, people that aren't athletes too, right? But because this is a platform for athletes to connect, how can athletes be proactive so they don't get to that point? I mean, again, not that they'll never experience mental, there's stresses and all of that, right? There's not that they're never going to experience it, but are there ways that they can be proactive so it doesn't get to the depth it did?
Yeah.
Like for you.
Yeah. I mean, just sharing that little bit at the beginning of, if you write down thoughts, feelings, and actions, like, just take a pulse of something that happened in your day. Right now, my dog is wanting to just be with me.
Right,
my husband's trying to draw her away, and she doesn't want to come. Yeah. Totally outside of both of our control. I'm thinking, she's not going to move. She's going to stay with me. This is pointless.
It's all right. I'm a dog lover.
I know. She's got what she wants, right now. I'm feeling a little uncertain, a little cautious, a little hesitant if she'll start jumping on the screen or something. So I'm just taking inventory of what's happening in the moment and how I behave. I'm choosing to share with you guys right now the reality of behind the screen, what's going on in this area, that you can't see. You just see this, and there's all that. So, just the actions of, all right, I'm going to be okay with her here. I'm going to rub her back. There's things that I'm becoming more aware of as I do this. So I literally, with this game Ferret Flesh that we've created, it is exactly that. You're faced with a situation and you go through a thought, feeling, and action round. However, you're not going to talk about your life, but it is a format that talks about the interplay of how all these work together. So we came up with an idea to do a ferret flush Friday. And so just like you might do like a gratitude list, or like, what's one thing, 3 things you're thankful for in the morning, on a Friday, what would it look like for you to write down a thought, feeling, and action about one situation? If you're doing that every single week, you're going to be training yourself to become more aware of what's going on in you and how that respond, like, how do you respond based on what's going on? And so you'll start seeing a thread. So that was just one simple thing that I think would keep someone emotionally and mentally healthy, is by taking a regular pulse of what is going on in your head. What feelings are you experiencing? And then how are you behaving? And it could be one word for each of them. It's not like you have to do a paragraph or now write your whole story. Take one simple example and do it one statement. And then again next week or something, and even if you don't do it, just do it once and see what it felt like. That's a starting point.
Yeah, no, that is really great. Like you said, developing an awareness and intentionality. Because we really have to pause and to take time to reflect in order for us to even realize what's going on. And a lot of times we don't. We're addicted to busy, right? Or filling the space with our devices, with noise, with whatever. So I think that was really that was really wise advice. Thank you for that. And you'll have to tell us a little bit more about ferret flush here in a few minutes. So you had mentioned the feelings chart in your story. Would you say that was part of your turning point in your healing, or was there something else that was a turning point for you, that all of a sudden something clicked and which really helped take the healing journey in a positive direction?
Yeah. Well, feeling charts are awesome. I love feeling charts. I love feeling wheels. They start with like the basic feelings, like anger or sadness, and then they get more descriptive and move outward. And so you're able to maybe talk about how you're irritated or frustrated, using words that are more descriptive for the same kind of emotion. But beyond getting a feelings chart and going to Remuda Ranch, one thing happened to me there that I had no clue what it exactly meant, but there was a woman that asked me across from a table, would you like to get rid of your eating disorder? And I was like, is that not the stupidest question to ask in an inpatient eating disorder facility? But I was like, yes. Did I get it right? She asked me if I have accepted Jesus into my life. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So she's like, well, would you like to, and I was like, well, I don't know. Anything to fix me at this point, like, could it get any worse? Like, I'll try whatever you got. And I prayed with her to start this relationship with God. And I had no idea what that meant. But 2 years later, a teammate of mine just started showing me a kind of love that was beyond what I had ever experienced in my life. And she probably didn't even realize what she was doing. But I started realizing I started reading the Bible for the first time in college. And there were certain sentences and what's called verses that told me something different than what I had been telling myself my whole life. So I talk about thoughts like I'm ugly, I'm fat. These are common thoughts that would flood my mind that are not helpful when you're struggling with food. And so I would read something simple like, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. You're God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. It's like you're not just beautiful, like you have been specifically designed. Like, everything about you is how I've made it. This is how I've made, like, can I accept? So that's where I started getting hit with some new thoughts of like, oh, like, I'm beautiful. Like, what would that feel like to start accepting that? Like, if the person that created me called me beautiful, do I believe that about myself, and why don't I? And so that was probably the real turning point, is starting to take listen to a new voice that was way more accurate. And that's something about really interesting about thoughts. Dr. Daniel Amen is a brain specialist, and he talks about automatic negative thoughts, that every human being is on autopilot negative. It's like, if we just don't intentionally think, it'll be like, we'll be in depression. So we have to, he talks about coming up with these anteaters, these like intentional statements. Our automatic thoughts are not always true. And so what is true? And so that's been a lot of my journey. And so literally, if I just settled into thoughts and feelings, so much of my recovery has been there. And then through the one that's created me, I feel like I've gotten to discover even more. It's like, okay, help me learn about myself and help me come back into these moments as a little girl that I didn't have the voice then, but how did you see it? And how would I talk to myself then? So it's been quite an adventure. But yeah, my relationship with God's it's been a unique one.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Everything right. Unique as we are. Absolutely. Okay. So this will be my last question. And then again, we'll open it up in case there's anybody else who wants to ask a question, if you've already answered this, then just say, yeah, that's, we can keep moving. But you talked about layers of an onion. So what are some of the, what's one layer? Let's do that. What's one layer you discovered about yourself in the journey? Because you talked about, early on, you didn't even know really the depth of who Brittany was. So is there something that you discovered about yourself in this as you peeled back layers?
There's a lot that I've discovered, Amy.
I'm sure there has been. So
I was thinking though,
yeah,
even in our work together though, just like this discovery that I really do love to play, and I love to have fun. And yet I have this hard work ethic that's like work, that just, it just naturally flows. And so literally Amy and I this last year have had to take my schedule and like, I have to intentionally plan rest and play. It's not something that I naturally do. And so just to understand that I'm not weird, like there's a reason why I have trouble playing. There's a reason why I have trouble resting. I have been trained for 22 years to not rest, like if you're going to rest, then you should be icing. Or if you're going to rest, like make sure you get 8 hours so that you can practice best, when you show up at 5 a.m. So everything that I did had like a very intentional purpose of an outcome. And so to incorporate play and rest, it's something that does not come naturally for me. But I want to incorporate it because it brings out the best Brittany. It brings out the best mom, the best wife, the best friend, the best sister, daughter. So I want to make sure that I am prioritizing that.
Fabulous. Love it. Well, thank you so much. This is, you've endured a lot of questions from me, which I know you're used to. Yeah. You're used to it, but, all right. So I do want to open up the floor if there's any other questions, that you'd like to hear from Brittany about. Yeah, good. All right. So I'm going to hand it over to Laura to close us out. So, oh yeah. Aparna.
All right, guys.
She has a message for you in the chat there, Brittany. Sorry, Laura. Yeah.
That's okay. That's okay. First, I want to say thank you to everyone once again that tuned in live and everybody that is listening via recording. We appreciate taking the time, especially this late, to be with us and hear Brittany's story. And I mean, who was blown away by Brittany's story? Because I know I am every time. This is, we heard part of her story a little over a week ago when we got to talk one-on-one with her, and we were all blown away by it. And we hope that this webinar is going to reach a lot of people and make a difference and really open up athletes' eyes, and parents and coaches, ADs, everybody that interacts with athletes, open their eyes to what, you know, mental health really can be, and that it needs to be talked about more. So this is part one of our 3-part series on mental health. We next have Austin Halcombe, who is the owner of Prime Performance, and that'll be on the 24th of August. He's going to be talking more about burnout, athlete burnout, as his topic. And then on September 9th, we also have Lisa Sumi that is going to be coming, and she's a mental health and sports performance consultant and specialist. And she's going to be talking more on the topic of what is athlete mental health, because it's a really broad topic, and really understanding what it means when we're talking about it is important. You know, Brittany, we want to thank you again too for taking the time to be here and be our first speaker. This was amazing and so moving, and we can't thank you enough for taking the time to be here. And, you know, one thing that Brittany mentioned was the importance of community. And one of the things that we are most excited about is creating a free community for athletes to connect with each other, to, you know, talk about things, to find resources, as Chris said. And that free community, all of you that were here tonight and then are on the email list that registered for this webinar are going to be invited tomorrow via email to our free community. So, you know, when you get that email, jump on in. We're there to talk to you, to work through what you might need, to help you through resources. In that community, we're going to be offering things like financial aid tips, recruiting basics. There's going to be printables for you to take on recruiting trips, college comparison charts, questions for coaches. It's going to be loaded with a lot of resources for athletes to be comfortable with their next steps, because that's what we're here for, support, right? We also have a website that if for some reason you don't get the email, if you go to nextleveladvantage.com, there's like 40 places that you can click join now to join this free community. Chris, good job on that. So he makes it nice and easy for everybody. So again, that's nextleveladvantage.com. Oh, I'm sorry, nextleveladvantage.com. Could help if I, you know the website of my own business, right? But nextleveladvantage.com is the website. So again, we thank you so much for being a part of our first webinar/podcast, and all of this is going to be recorded, and you all have access to this in the community among all the other resources that we're going to be sharing. We're also going to have guest speakers in there. The other thing that we are hoping to put together very soon is a subscription option that's going to be more one-on-one and individualized programming for people to help more individualized needs for athletes. So we look forward to mentoring more athletes. And if you or anybody else know somebody that could benefit from this, please share. We're excited to help, and we thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. We know it's well late for those in the Eastern time zone anyway. So we so appreciate you. Thank you, Laura, for closing us out, and Brittany. Again, just a sincere thank you for sharing your story, for letting us in. And I know your story, and like what Aparna said, I don't know if you got a chance to read that in the chat, but you have some great suggestions and wisdom that I think will help a lot of people in their mental health journey as an athlete, and whether they're an athlete or not, but especially for our fellow athletes who need this so much. So, all right, well, thank you, everybody. That closes off our first webinar podcast. And again, thanks so much for showing up. And hopefully we'll see you again in our next webinar on mental health with Austin. Okay. All right. Good night, everybody.